morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this bright and early start. Well, I hope it's bright where you are. My name is Terry Martin, Head of Operations at the Alliance, and welcome to this session, People Pulse, the Findings. Annabelle Dunstan, founder of Question and Retain, an Alliance key partner who run the survey on our behalf, will begin the session. Annabelle will look at the results in detail from the latest quarter's people results, which, by the way, had a record response. Following that, Annabelle will be joined by our esteemed panel, and then after that, we'll be looking at your questions. So if you've got any questions at the moment, just put them in the chat, and we will respond to those. But to start the session, over to you, Annabelle.
Thanks very much, Terry, and just checking you can all see that full screen. Lovely. Yeah, thanks so much for making time bright and early on a Thursday morning. I will start, and as Terry quite rightly said, we've had a really strong response to this quarter. So you can see the figures along the top rising gradually. A little drop in August, I think everyone was on the deck chairs perhaps, but Q4 we saw 439 responses across 66 agencies, which is fantastic, and we want that trend to continue. So please do make use of the link we send out in early spring for Q1 2022. And all agencies that send over 6 responses obviously get their tailored report for their agency. So this is gold dust. So if you're not currently involved, then please do. And don't be afraid if your results don't match up to these strong results we've got here. There's always time to make improvements. Better that you know what's going on within your agency. So that's the headline figures for the end of Q4 2021. If I go to the next slide, which is pride, first of all. So we asked 9 questions. You'll recall we cover topics including pride, respect, trust, diversity and inclusion, learning and development, returning to work. We've added in a new question this quarter, which is your agency perspective on sustainability and what you're doing, and there's a big focus on that today's call, obviously, and then also the mental health score. So we'll look at those 9 questions in turn. I wouldn't get too fixated on the quant data. We've got pretty similar trends across each quarter, but the gold dust really sits in the qualitative data, the verbatim comments that people leave. And so in each of these slides, do take a moment to read. The green comment is the gold standard. That's what we want agency staff to be saying, feeling, thinking. And the amber is where there's room for improvement. So thinking about your own agency now as a leader, what do you think your people are feeling when you ask them the question, do you feel proud to work at your agency? And have you got a sense of what people might say? So the amber comment here, I'm increasingly aware of the disconnect between what we say and what we do. So some joining of the dots needed there, perhaps for that agency. So yeah, as you can see, the figures holding steady at around 2/3 feeling pride, and 29% sitting in that slightly less good, but still strong, and just 6% in the unsure or not very good. So then we go to pride. I beg your pardon, respect. Are you encouraged to voice your opinions and ideas? So again, holding steady around nearly 3/4 saying yes, they are, and for the most part at 23, which is a really good trend. Obviously in a communications agency and advertising and PR and digital world, we need to have opinions and ideas heard and freely expressed. But we have got a negative there. Only the opinions of a few are really valued and the rest are ignored. And this can come down to training. You might have much quieter people in your organisation and perhaps who are less visible now that we've got a hybrid working and people are working at home more. So how do you make sure that all voices are heard and opinions are valued? So that could be around training and increasing understanding of what people are feeling and thinking. Why there's a we'll go to trust next. Are you trusted to get on and do a good job? We've got an increase there from last time of 71 up to 77%. I think it's been really interesting. The agenda for working from home was rapidly accelerated, as we know, over the last 2 years, flexible working and moving away from presenteeism. And so there was a fear that perhaps trust would be impacted, but it seems to be in a very good state. We're trusted to be accountable to ourselves and those we work with, which allows for a lot of autonomy and equally responsibility in the work we do. So that's a really fantastic gold standard comment that you would hope that all your people are saying. But you have got the negative there. Constantly feel like certain individuals are not working as a team and using subtle bullying. It says bullying, I believe that means bullying techniques to get their way. So really not what you want any of your team to be saying, but it's there lurking. So better that you know that there's a sense that that's happening. And whilst this is all anonymized and we don't advocate trying to work out who said that at all, if you've got a sense that that's happening, are you doing stuff to do good team building to ensure that everyone feels safe and secure and able to bring their real selves to work? Okay, diversity and inclusion. Is your agency taking positive steps to improve D&I? This is something that Question and Retain is working almost exclusively on at the moment. We're doing a lot of work in this space with agencies and membership organisations and corporates, following the Black Lives Matter and the talent pool shrinking following Brexit and the skills shortage. This is such a key area. So if you're not on it, then 2022, it needs to be the year that you are. Happily, 50% of agencies are deemed to be taking positive steps, but far too many sitting in the unsure or not really. Nearly 1 in 5 agency staff, representative of 66 agencies, saying unsure or not really. So really work to do here. I heard a really interesting fact the other day of if 100 white men leave their jobs, then there are only 66 to fill their shoes. That's the stats for 2021. So that means if you're only recruiting in your likeness, if you're a male white board member, then your talent pool is diminishing and you're missing out on opportunities. So seeing the benefits of recruiting from a widened pool can really help push that agenda forward for D&I within your business. So again, looking at the negative comment there, our agency is not diverse. There are very few people of colour and people who are different. I don't think there's a D&I inclusion team, nor are there any steps being taken to combat this homogeneity. And of course, we're not just talking about people of colour, we're talking about neurodiversity, LGBTQ+. So yeah, 2022, if you put anything on the top of your agenda, I would put D&I. Okay, banging the drum. Learning and development, very key part of the Alliance work is to further people's professional training and offer fantastic courses. If you're not continuing to invest in learning and development, you will be left behind. We need people who have got relevant skills. Q4, we have seen that drop. That's been the biggest drop in any of these questions we've asked, from 54% down to 42%, saying yes, I am. And I'm just thinking that probably ties in with the upsurge of new biz that's happened between August and December. At least that's what we've seen in talking to the tens of agencies we work with. So I think it's been a very busy period, and therefore training can drop off the back end. So they do say that those agencies that continue to invest through tough times in training emerge as the stronger winning teams of the future. So keep an eye on your training and development. And when you've got the gold standard, again, there's a clear focus on investment and personal development, and there's ample opportunities to learn. So again, when we conduct exit interviews with staff who have chosen to jump ship, often learning and development and feeling that they weren't growing or that they were actually stale comes up a lot, that and line management. So learning and development, really key. Check in with your people that they're getting fresh perspectives and opportunities to learn. Returning to the office, how satisfied are you with your agency's return to work plan? I'm surprised this isn't greater. We're still at 53% saying very satisfied. On the basis we're in the communications sector, one would think that communicating the plan and putting plans into action would be our absolute key a talent that we would have. So yeah, some work to do there. And we've got someone saying nothing in concrete with what people are requested to do. Some people are in, some never come in, etc., even though it's been encouraged. So perhaps revisiting that, the communications around it in particular, and checking in with people, doing your own pulse check, or using us if you wish, to deep dive on that, what's working well and what's not, in terms of the return to the office. And it does come down to communication, which is why we asked this question. We've got 43% saying the leadership team communicated where the agency is going. again, if people aren't singing from the same hymn sheet and knowing where you're going, how can you possibly flourish as an agency? So you really need to know, people really need to know what it stands for, why they should come to work, what they should be wrapping their arms around. We've seen that ESG is very much on the agenda. So what's your approach as an agency? What purpose do you have other than serving clients? Why is it that people would want to come to work? How are they part of your company mission? Yeah, again, the gold standard, regular communication to all staff about agency growth plans is the happy place. And then the unhappy place is where there's a lot of talk but no action. So communicating is one thing, but then do what you say you're going to say, what you're going to do, and then do what you said you're going to do is the key. Okay, and then sustainability. So you'll see this is a new question for this quarter, and we'll definitely be tracking that. And that's going to be the focus for today's call with our 3 other speakers. How do you rate your agency's approach to sustainability in relation to climate change? And only 20% are saying it's really good. So we've got quite good at 34%, and unsure and not very good, a total of 44%, and poor. So nearly half of agency staff think that it's not very good or poor, or are unsure, on the fence, which means they don't really know what their agency is up to. And we had a slew of really interesting comments, which we can pick out. A couple we've got here on the right, from very positive through to really not doing much at all. But the theme of the comments that we received was around, well, what can we do beyond switching energy supplies and not drive to work? So I hope today you'll go away. We've, as a team, developed a top 10. Alex has particularly worked hard on creating a top 10 baby steps that you could take as an agency. So I hope that will be a great takeout for you from today's call. And then finally, mental health score. We had hoped this would continue in a positive trend, but you can see it's just dropped back on the NPS scale to -15 from -10. I'm sure I'm teaching Granny to suck eggs, but 0 would be a good median point between -100 and 100. If we hit 0, we're on the way to being having a good score, but we're still at -15. I suspect it's the winter ahead causing a little more angst and anxiety, and of course the variants news recently, and unsure whether we're going into lockdown or not, is impacting. So a real watch point as ever, what's really going on with your team on the mental health side. Make sure your mental first aiders are on the ball. And that is me. Thank you. I haven't clocked whether there are any questions along the way, but please do flag them in the chat, or come back to me one-to-one later if you like. Thank you. Can't hear you, Terry.
Yeah, just got myself off mute. Thank you so much. Yeah, really good overview of the People Pulse. So thank you very much. So now we are going to turn our attention to our panel discussion. So obviously sustainability was a new question in the People Pulse, and because it's become increasingly important for agencies to prove their credentials in this area, we decided that we're going to get together a panel to actually sort of delve more into this area and discuss it in detail. On our panel are actually from member agencies who are either looking to get B Corp certified, or actually they're in the process at the moment of being certified. So they definitely know what they're talking about on this subject. So I'd like to introduce Alex Holloman, Managing Director of Climbing Trees, Georgie Howlett, Director at Stand Agency, and Susan Boland, Managing Director at Jelly Bean. So welcome, panel, and thanks for joining us. So I think the first question I'd like to pose to you would be that why should agencies take sustainability seriously? And why do you take it so seriously? Georgie, I think you could probably start on this question and lead it.
Sure. I think, how can you not take it seriously is the kind of the outtake for us. I mean, your motivations might differ, but either way it's imperative. So it's either directly as a business you care about the planet and, you know, we all have a role to play, or your business success depends on it too, because I think we're all aware of the statistics around Gen Z and millennials choosing one job over another because of a sustainability agenda, or even prioritizing it above pay. So it's a candidates market at the moment, and not only is that pressure, you know, if you want to have the best people working for you, you need to have a stance on sustainability. And similarly, that shift is now going across to clients as well. So because our clients are under pressure from whether they're B2B or they're direct to consumer, they are having to look at their sustainability agenda. They're looking at maybe becoming B Corp or whatever that looks like. And it means that they're then going, okay, so when I come to choose an agency to work with or a consultancy, I'm going to look for somebody who has a stance on this as well. So when it comes to business success, you have to kind of pay attention to it too. And I also think there's two areas in which we look at sustainability. One is operational and one is in terms of our services. So operational is, you know, whether that's becoming a B Corp, which we're in the final stages of, or something similar. And services is where, you know, being consultants, making sure that we are responding to our clients' needs. So sustainability is an increasing area of pressure. So how can we make sure that we're offering services and things that respond to that need? So for example, Stand has a whole area of comms and focus on what we call sustainability, which is like the nexus of sustainability and innovation, because we're seeing such a surge in kind of client need in that space. But I guess either way you cut it, sustainability matters.
And I think to echo what Georgie said, we've just run a white paper which we're going to release the results of in the next couple of days or so. And we interviewed 266 UK and US respondents, 145 in agencies and 121 in-house, asking about their attitudes towards sustainability. And so what we know is from that, 61% of clients said sustainability is important to their organisation. 35% of clients said they only work with agencies that have sustainable credentials. And then half of the agencies said that 3/4 of their new business opportunities in the last year had been asked for ethical and sustainable credentials. So I think the business case is very much there as well. And so I think where the money goes, the rest of us will follow. So I think sustainability has to be on the agenda for a very business reason, but then also it's morally the right thing to do as well.
Yeah, but at the same time, is it the agency's responsibility or is it the client's responsibility, do you think, Alex?
And so in terms of, I think there is, from the report that we've just run, there is a view that agencies are being somewhat clients are being somewhat over-reliant on agencies to help drive the agenda, where there's an opportunity for there to be potentially a more collaborative approach.
Definitely, definitely. And that's probably the answer, isn't it? Susan, what's your view on this?
Well, I mean, as an agency, I mean, we've been going for 34 years and part of our DNA is about doing good. And obviously more and more so sustainability has risen up that agenda. So we're very active with our charity work and developing our team and all of that kind of CSR side of things. But specifically on sustainability, we're also finding it a really useful way of engaging with the team and giving them ownership over where we're going with our sustainability journey as an agency. What we've just launched, inspired by Earthshot, is our Beanshot initiative, where we've put together multi-level teams within the agency to go away and think about what we can do to improve our sustainability against those 5 pillars that are set out in the Earthshot initiative. I'm sure everyone's probably seen the programme. So that, I think, has really started to get people thinking about it. We are very active and we're very proactive on what we can do, but there's always something more you can do. So I think that's been a really nice way of engaging the team, giving them ownership over our sustainability and not seeing it as something that's coming from the top and the leadership team and sort of dictates of we're doing this, we're doing that. More about, okay, as a whole kind of collaborative agency, what can we do so everyone's kind of involved in it.
No, I like that. I like the idea of, you know, involving the team and a sense of ownership almost for them. That's really crucial. But talking about teams, obviously we all know that there's huge issues with talent at the moment. Alan-Bell, do you think that maybe we could use sustainability almost to attract talent? Oh, you're on mute.
I do, as long as it's not it's a tick box exercise. It needs to be really red-dyed through everything you do as an agency, and the benefit of that is then it should be the pull for talent. I don't think you can use it in a cynical, let's get this policy written and then we'll attract talent as a result. It's got to be truly part of what you're doing and it will speak for itself. I've been very impressed with Jellybean at Climbing Trees and Stand in the pre-chats that we've had. It just shines through that they're walking the talk, and that will attract the talent. So it's horse before cart. I think get your credentials in order and talk proudly about them and do the doing, plant the trees, do all the top 10 list that Alex is recommending, which will come out, I'm sure. And then the talent will follow that. And also you've then got people talking about you. So that new talent, when they start at the agency and they feel that they see it's eat, breathe, sleep, sustainability, they will be talking to their peer group, and you will attract talent in that way. So as long as you do it the right way round, then yes, of course, it's a happy side effect.
Yeah, so it's more about sort of ingraining it in the purpose of the agency. Okay, that
So I was just going to come in on that because I think it's really similar actually to some of the conversations that we've had before around purpose, in that it's very easy to get it wrong if it does feel sort of bolt on. It's similar to debates that have happened before around CSR, and that feeling like tagged on because maybe if you paint a few school walls that will do the trick and it looks like you're doing the right thing. I think the same applies to sustainability because it's moving so fast as an area. It would be very blatant if you're just doing it for the sake of it. And I think if there's any way you can look for it to kind of like thread through your whole organization, so it's not just a set of policies, but it's also entwined with the way in which you work with your clients and your culture and all of that kind of stuff, then it's that much more authentic. And that's what the new generation that's kind of starting to dominate the workforce is looking for.
Absolutely. And I think for us 2 years ago we weren't thinking about any of this stuff, and we haven't really started speaking about it because we've had to make sure foundationally that the ground that we're building on is very solid, because otherwise it would just be very wishy-washy and people would see through it. And what I've sensed with some of the team is that they're more bound to us as an organisation as a result of doing it. So that it goes above providing the services we deliver. There's actually some sort of higher reason for coming into work, as like with the sort of younger generation we're employing.
I completely agree, and I think I mentioned off topic on sustainability of the work we do with charities. We do 12 days of Christmas, so you can put forward the charity that you're working closely with or is close to your heart. I think wherever we're trying to do anything that is part of our just doing good in the world, it has to come from the whole team, because otherwise, as you say, it doesn't feel authentic if it's a dictate that comes from on high. It's something that everybody has to get involved in.
Thank you very much. So obviously we know that a lot of you are sort of investigating or in the process of the B Corp source, but let's get more into the detail now and more sort of the practical stuff that you guys are doing sort of on a daily basis. And I know, Alex, we were speaking another conversation about sort of the 1, 2, 3 missions, all that sort of stuff. So could you sort of explain that a bit more for us? And the Million Tree Pledge, I think it was also that we're discussing. Absolutely.
So from a standing start, so 2019, this wasn't on my agenda at all. So we started, I think the very first step we made was there's a website called Ecology, where you can go on, add the number of team you've got, whether they're long distance like travellers and that kind of thing, and it will work out a program of offsetting and tree planting. So immediately you're sort of doing something, and that would take 15 minutes, half an hour or something like that to do. And so Ecology is a very simple sort of thing to do. And I did it and I sort of felt quite good. And I sort of thought we're, carbon positive. And then you start sort of like learning a little bit more. And we then went through the B Corp application process, where you look at a whole load of stuff. And one segment is the environment. And you start getting an understanding about the impact of choices you make on buying stuff. So that could be energy, office stationery. Then you think about, I don't know, we used to do a company trip where we'd just like fly the team out to Malta or Oslo and that kind of thing without really thinking about the carbon emissions. Now we know that the Channel Tunnel, for example, is 80% less in terms of carbon emissions. Sometimes it's 95% less. And so we'll be doing that kind of thing instead, even though it's probably about 5 times the cost. And so that B Corp application process helped link for me the understanding of what we do and what we buy and what we purchase and the actual environmental impact of it. So we did stuff like offsetting, doing the switching to renewable energy, and that's something I couldn't believe we hadn't done earlier. And so that made a massive impact on our carbon emissions. And then we're just in the process now of doing some more advanced stuff like measuring, we're going to get some science-based targets in place measuring our scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions, which is quite a sort of complex undertaking, but we're going to get a professional to come in and run that process for us. So scope 1 emissions is stuff like if we have a gas boiler in the office and that kind of thing. Scope 2 is the stuff like energy, travel, commuting to work, air miles, the stuff you buy. And then scope 3 are the services that you buy. And so I think the major opportunity for agencies is our clients, if they're looking at their emissions in that way, scope 1, 2 and 3, if they need to come up with a business case to reduce their emissions, especially for scope 3, our services will be housed under that. And so if we can reduce our scope 3 emissions, have really strong environmental credentials, then we'll probably get through the procurement process a lot easier. And then the final thing, that then the ecology process, we took that, and there's a group of agencies and businesses which have signed up to planting 1 million trees before 2030. And so it's called the Million Tree Pledge. And there's actually one of them, a hosting company, which is actually signed up to doing 1 billion trees. And so having a daft company name like Climbing Trees, planting trees is quite a good thing. So I think it's, you know, there's a whole range of things that you can do. So
that's, well, it's a lot of stuff.
And I think just to build on what Alex has said, you know, we submitted our B Corp application back in March, and you know, as a lot of people know, there's a bit of a backlog. But what's great about what it gets you to do is, I think quite a lot of people hear sustainability and think it just means environment, or there's a sort of a default to thinking like that. And as Alex has just touched on, it is there's broader elements. Environment is one of, I think, 5 elements within the B Corp application. There's governance, workers, community, environment, and customers. And for each of those, you've got to kind of look at what you're doing as a business and thinking about your kind of impact in the space in which you operate. So in your local community, you've got to think about, you know, whether you're best practice for your workers. So it does sort of like force you in a good way to think about all facets of what sustainability means. And I think there's another thing to consider, and I guess this also sort of flips the point I made earlier about, you know, you can consider this from an operational perspective or from kind of a service offering perspective, but this area is moving so quickly, and I think it's sort of our role as consultants to keep pace with like the change in this area on behalf of our clients. And I think even the word sustainability itself is insufficient and is starting to become jaded. You know, the idea of being in a holding pattern that isn't going to cut it anymore. You know, that's pretty obvious from what we've learned from COP26 and all the insights before. But really what we should be doing is shifting the narrative towards, you know, regeneration and regenerative action, and pushing our clients to think bigger and be braver and be bolder. I think that's a kind of a unique position of consultants to help kind of move that along.
And that's actually, that leads on nicely to Susan. You were talking about a point that you had picked up in our session with Sir Martin Sorrell on longevity.
Yeah, it was an interesting one, because he was talking really about how difficult it is in a commercial operation, whether that's client or agency, if you're focused very much on quarterly numbers, on yearly profits, on shareholders, on 5-year plans, on certain very commercial targets, that sometimes it can fall down the list of priorities, your attitude to sustainability. Obviously, I'm sure everyone on this call appreciates that isn't right, because a lot of what Georgie and Alex have already said shows how important sustainability goes hand in hand with commercial success. You know, it is becoming something that you need to have, and whether you feel it kind of in your soul and you want to be with it for the right reasons, or whether it is purely a commercial decision. But where those kind of short-term goals can sometimes counteract really nice, really sort of big thinking and longevity. And I think one of the benefits we have at Jelly Bean, because we are, as everyone on this call is, independent, and we've been around for 34 years. We've had the same founder and CEO for those 34 years. So nothing has ever been done on the basis of, you know, a quick win, quick profits. It's about making sure that we have that longevity. And so if we're putting something in place, it's about looking to the longer future, looking at what's right for our team, what's going to help benefit the business in a sort of more holistic way. And I think that's something that, Sir Martin Sorrell mentioned about how it can be a challenge if you don't have that set up to kind of manage to get the sustainability up the priority list when profit is king.
Thanks, Susan. So, Annabelle, since we're talking about what agencies could do in this area, do you think there's any lessons that we could learn from the pandemic, actually, to try and sort of accelerate, sustainability in agencies, in the practices?
That's a really good question. I think what the pandemic has shown us all is that we can make changes rapidly when there's an imperative and then the will gathers behind that. So we did suddenly all have to work from home, laptops, Wi-Fi, etc., all had to be sorted. So I think if we could apply the same sense of urgency, which is so clear that we need to do after COP and everything that's gone before, then I think innovation, I think Georgie mentioned the word regeneration in our pre-chat, which I'd love for her to touch on again, but to use the creative, the hive mind of, you know, we're an incredible bunch of people, independent agencies. We are known to be fleet of foot and innovative. So let's apply that to the most pressing matter in hand. So I don't know if I answered your question, but yes, yeah. I think it's given us all a wake-up call that we can achieve a tremendous amount, and, you know, small actions by individuals can lead to important, massive change. And the comms sector sits in a brilliant place where we're influencers. You know, we serve the comms industry, but I used to be in it as an agency owner. And we're talking to chief execs and leadership teams day in, day out. So we can have massive effect and impact. So yeah, let's build on that momentum, the positive side of pandemic, that we can come together and collaborate and achieve greater things. So yes, rousing, raw speech.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that, Annabelle. So the next question I'm kind of going to pose not only to the panel, but to everyone who's gathered here. And it's about how can the Alliance itself actually help agencies who commit to a journey of improving sustainability. For example, the Alliance is starting a new action group next year called the Sustainability Group. So that's one of the areas that we can work on with you, you know, to improve our agencies in this area. But I'm just throwing this question out there to the audience. What do you think? What can we do to really help you in this area? What tools, resources, anything like that? Anyone?
I think from our point of view, we aren't as far along as Alex and Georgie with regard to actually submitting B Corp status. So it would be useful if there are any recommended and accredited consultants who can help with that process. If you had like a list maybe of these people are tried and tested and your kind of go-tos.
Gotcha.
And I think there's something that we talked about before that perhaps, I don't know quite how it comes together, but as people are going through, if they do decide to, do the B Corp certification, something that crops up around environment that is a little more out of your control if you're in shared offices is around the environment section, where, you know, they will have, a shared office will have its own policies around energy, recycling, and waste. And if there are ways in which, you know, we can find out if there are other agencies that are part of this network that are in the same shared office space, then we could perhaps use kind of collective pressure to get them to improve some of their policies. I think that's where the whole idea of, I think Annabelle, you touched on it, but collaboration, there's a real opportunity to kind of push for change faster if we work together.
Also sharing best practice, you know, what's worked well. If you have had a focus on sustainability, what top 3 things have you put in place that the team have galvanized around? And then conversely, what 3 blocks have been? And if we could all share that, we'd suddenly have a great pool of shared knowledge because I think it can feel a bit daunting. And Alex, I'd love you to share your top 10. I don't know if you can drop it into the chat function, but sometimes being given a list like that can really focus minds, and it's often the starting that is difficult. So if the sustainability group could be used, and Terry, none of my business, but I'm going to give an idea, is that, if we shared, top 3 things that have worked, and then 3 blocks that are stopping us doing more, and then use that as a problem solving forum.
Perfect. Yeah, that is a great idea.
And what I'll do, I'll share that list with Terry afterwards, if it's okay, and get Terry to circulate it to everyone that came.
Sure.
From the research that we did, we know the top blockers in terms of getting a sustainability agenda moving are, firstly, senior management, and that was both from clients and from in agencies, and then secondly, budget. And so that whole thing about getting senior buy-in, getting a team in-house that are then vested in getting something set up is really important. So there could be something around you do the green jam things. There could be something like that where for more junior members of the team, you give them some ownership in terms of setting up a like collaborative thing in-house.
Great.
Yeah, or potentially some best practice things around policies as well. I'm just thinking, you know, it's an upshot of being independent, isn't it? Is you're able to kind of make decisions quite quickly, because I think that's where things can slow down, is on just how much work might need to be done, and how many decisions might need to be made around policies. So being able to kind of like share if there's, you know, existing drafts somewhere else, or somebody's got a template that other people can use.
Also a register of go-to people. So Alex, you kindly said you'd share the consultant you're using for the scope 1 to 3, but maybe an Alliance approved list of suppliers that we are happy to recommend that we've come across would be useful.
Yeah, and be leaders if people want to go through that process. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Perfect. And I'm guessing that you have no problems with any of our members reaching out to you personally to discuss any of these.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
Yeah, cool. That's perfect. Do you want me to share that list? Because I've got it. So do you want to do it afterwards, Alex?
If you've got it to hand, please do.
I do actually. Let me drop it in the chat quickly. So here we go, everyone. I don't know how the formatting comes out here, but it should be there. Can you see it there, Alex?
Yeah, it's there.
Yep.
Laura's got a question, Terry. I don't know if you spotted that above your list.
Oh, let's have a look. Right. All right, so Laura has asked, main thing I wish we'd known was around expectations, the level of changes needed from Matt and Pat leave to benefits and policies. And secondly, how long the process decision will take. Okay, yeah, I can see that. So Laura actually is from Stan, isn't she? Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it sounds like it's quite a lengthy process.
Yeah, I think they hit a sudden influx of it, you know, like any tipping point, you know, where they've been gathering momentum, the B Corp movement, particularly in FMCG and in consultancies, because we can be fairly nimble compared to some big organisations with supply chains. But either way, they've hit a bottleneck.
Laura, do you have anything else to add to that question, since you're sort of in the thick of the process?
Yeah, hopefully we're almost at the other end, but yeah, I think I was surprised at the level of changes. I thought we had kind of quite strong benefits, a very strong culture, but we had to change a lot of policies. And also we'd always done a day's volunteering, and we've now upped that to 2.5 days a year. Now, bear in mind, we already give birthday extra holiday. We have an enforced shutdown at Christmas and give extra holiday for that. We're actually, you know, it was meaning that we're sort of upping people's days to sort of closer to 30. So, you know, it was less of a question and more of a statement. It's when you embark on this process, you know, have you manage your own expectations of the kind of rule of return, that, you know, there's a lot of changes and there's a year of changes. that you're going to have to make, and they're lasting ones because you come back and measure this, and that's exactly how it should be. But don't think you're going to have this logo to put on your website within 2 weeks that kind of says that you're a B Corp, because there's no guarantee it'll even be in a year. It might be much longer than that. So yeah, it was more of a statement, you know, as a founder, as an MD, go into this process really understanding that it's serious and it's not just a tick box exercise.
Yeah, and there's quite a waiting list, isn't there?
Well, as Georgie said, you know, we're a year almost, well, from starting it, over a year, but I'll be surprised if we hear within the year, because we're in our second lot of kind of clarification and questions. And the good thing is for us, we've got better in that year, so we're picking up extra points. But yeah, I didn't expect it to be as a significant shift, and we're independent, and as Georgie says, quite easy to change, but there are independent agencies that are 200-300 people that will find it harder, because the cost of, you know, increasing your holidays and benefits by 10 or 20% obviously is going to make a difference.
Thank you very much. Right, I think we've pretty much come to the end of the session now. But we've posted the sort of top 10 things that an agency can do. These are pretty practical steps for anyone to take. So we will share these actually after the call with all the people on this call. And if you want to reach out to any of our panel, please do. I can share their details with you. And thank you so much for joining us on that. Thank you, Annabelle, again, Alex, Susan, and Georgie. Incredible, insightful, and always thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.